They call them the twins of Bama, though that is not their real name. I want to be upfront about that from the first sentence. The two women I am describing are a composite drawn from documented household patterns in Bama County in China's Guangxi region, not verified named individuals, but the detail itself is typical and it is worth sitting with. Every morning for more than 80 years, these two sisters have stood at the same stone hearth, stirring the same clay pot. One adds the hemp seeds, the other adds the soybeans. They have never once called it a diet. It is simply what happens before sunrise, the way it happened yesterday and the day before that. When researchers came to Bama to study why so many people there were living past 100, they expected complexity. What they kept finding instead was the same bowl showing up across the valley. Here is the number that makes this worth your time. One population analysis put Bama's centenarian rate at roughly 36.5 per 100,000 people, several times higher than the international benchmark typically used to define a longevity hotspot based on Guangxi's own regional population records. That is a valley where living past 100 is treated as unremarkable, in a country where, on average, it very much is not. So researchers went looking for the mechanism, not the myth. What they found breaks into 3 layers. Layer 1 is the foundation, and it is unglamorous. Reviews of the baseline diet across the Bama population describe it as low-calorie, low-fat, low animal protein, low salt, low sugar, high fiber, and high in vitamin E. No superfood, no exotic compound, just restraint applied daily for decades without anyone there ever framing it as a program. But restraint alone does not explain the biology. Researchers at Guangxi University compared the metabolic profiles of 30 healthy Bama centenarians against 31 elderly residents in the same region, aged 60 to 70. They found meaningfully different gut signatures, including a notably higher relative abundance of Lactobacillus in the centenarian group, alongside distinct short-chain fatty acid production. Short-chain fatty acids come from fiber fermenting in the colon, and lactobacillus is associated with a calmer, better regulated gut environment. The low-calorie, high-fiber pattern that looks like frugal eating is, underneath, feeding a microbial ecosystem cultivated for decades longer than their younger neighbors had been alive. Here is layer 1 in practice, starting today. Take one meal, ideally breakfast, and rebuild it around a whole grain, high-fiber porridge instead of refined starch. Cut the added salt and sugar out of that meal completely. You are recreating, in miniature, the exact caloric and fiber profile that shows up in the Bama data. Now for layer 2, the amplifier, and this is where the story gets specific. When researchers looked at what Bama residents ate that grew locally and cost nothing, they kept landing on 2 plants, hemp seed and a foraged bitter vegetable called Sonchus oleraceus, or sow thistle. Both grow wild on unfarmed land around the village, gathered the way people there have gathered them for generations. A study examining a diet built around these 2 plants found that it prevented age-related metabolic syndrome and extended lifespan in aged mice. I want to be precise here. It is an animal study, and it does not prove the identical effect in humans. But it tells us this combination carries a documented protective signature inside a controlled laboratory model. Sitting alongside the hemp seed and bitter greens is the other daily constant in the Bama kitchen, fermented soy. Tofu and a homemade soybean porridge many families prepare fresh each morning, functioning as the primary protein households build their day around. And here the picture widens beyond Bama, because researchers looking at soy and isoflavone intake across other large Chinese populations found the numbers pointing in the same direction. The Singapore Chinese Health Study followed over 35,000 women and found that those with high soy isoflavone intake had an 18% lower risk of breast cancer compared to those with lower intake. A separate case control study conducted in Shanghai comparing over 1,400 women with breast cancer to more than 1,500 women without it, found that women in the highest decile of soy intake had a 30% lower risk compared to those in the lowest decile. And the Shanghai Women's Health Study, following more than 73,000 women over multiple years, found that those in the top quintile of adult soy intake had less than half the risk of premenopausal breast cancer compared to those in the bottom quintile. 3 separate research teams, 3 different Chinese populations, 3 different decades of independent data collection, all converging on the same compound family, isoflavones, delivered the same way, through daily fermented soy food rather than an isolated supplement. That convergence is the moment I most want you to sit with in this video. This is not one study that might turn out to be a fluke. This is independent teams using different designs in different cities, arriving at the same direction of effect. The proposed mechanism is that soy isoflavones act as phytoestrogens, plant compounds capable of modulating estrogen receptor activity in ways that appear protective across these populations. This is descriptive biology, not a personal promise, and these remain population-level associations rather than a guarantee for any one body. But consistency across 3 independent cohorts spanning tens of thousands of women is exactly the kind of signal that makes serious researchers pay attention. Here is layer 2 in practice. Add 1 daily serving of tofu or unsweetened soy porridge, if you can find or make it, into your day, and add 1 bitter leafy green to at least 1 meal. You will not have wild Sonchus oleraceus growing near your home, most likely, but dandelion greens, mustard greens, or bitter melon leaf occupy a similar niche in flavor and phytochemical density, and they are almost certainly sitting in a grocery store you already shop at. Now for layer 3, and it has nothing to do with what sits on the plate. When researchers surveyed Bama residents directly about lifestyle, they documented something consistent across households. Many centenarians continued light physical work well into their 90s, not a gym, not a structured program, simply the ordinary labor of tending a garden, walking to a neighbor's house, carrying water from a well. They also documented dense, multi-generational households with older residents embedded fully in daily family life rather than set apart from it. This is the same pattern that surfaces again and again once you compare longevity research across different regions of the world. It was true in the Adventist communities of California. It was true among the Centenarians studied in Boston. It was true in the mountain villages of Sicily. The food does enormous measurable work at the cellular level, but in every one of these populations, that food was never eaten alone, and it was never treated as a temporary program. It was eaten inside a life that kept moving gently every day, surrounded by other people doing the same thing. I want to be honest about one more thing, because most videos oversell the ending. Even within Bama's own long-lived population, the picture is not flawless. A study of over 300 nonagenarians and centenarians in the Guangxi region found 28% still met the clinical criteria for metabolic syndrome, with elevated blood pressure the most common component. Living to 100 in Bama does not mean arriving without any biological wear. It means arriving with dramatically less of it than expected, not with none. That distinction genuinely matters. This is not a cure, and it is not a shield. It is a pattern that appears across multiple independent lines of evidence to shift the odds substantially in your favor over the course of a lifetime, while still leaving you an ordinary, fallible human body that needs real medical attention along the way. So here is the complete system, laid out simply one more time. Layer 1, the foundation, a low-calorie, low-salt, low-sugar, high-fiber base built around whole grains rather than refined starch, feeding the same short-chain fatty acid and lactobacillus pathway documented directly in the Bama Centenarian gut studies. Layer 2, the amplifier, daily fermented soy paired with a daily bitter green, drawing on isoflavone research replicated across 3 separate large Chinese cohort studies, alongside the foraged plant pattern documented in the Bama diet itself. Layer 3, the frame that holds the other two together, light daily movement that never fully stops, and meals eaten inside a family or community structure rather than alone. None of these 3 layers do much across a single week. That is the part of this story the wellness industry tends to leave out, because it does not package well. The gut microbiome shift documented in the Bama metabolomic study is the result of decades of consistent fiber intake, not 30 days of effort. The isoflavone signal in the Shanghai cohorts emerged from tracking tens of thousands of women across years, not weeks. This is slow chemistry. It compounds quietly, the same bowl, the same pot, the same short walk to the same neighbor's house, repeated until it becomes invisible to the person actually living it, which is precisely what happened to the sisters I described at the start of this video. They were never managing a protocol in their own minds. They were simply making breakfast the way their mother had. Here is the one thing to do today before anything else on this list. Find a soybean, a piece of tofu, or a bag of dried soybeans in your kitchen, and 1 bitter green, and cook the 2 of them together tonight, alongside whatever whole grain you already have in your pantry. That single meal reflects all 3 research threads at once: the fiber and short-chain fatty acid pathway, the isoflavone pathway, and the plant-forward, low animal protein pattern the Bama data keeps pointing back toward. If you want the fuller version of this, mapped out week by week with shopping lists adapted for a Western kitchen rather than a Guangxi village, that is exactly what the Old World Table Protocol was put together to do, walking through each of these longevity regions, one complete system at a time, so you are never left guessing which layer to start with. If this kind of research holds your attention, subscribe to Blue Zone Way, because we go one region and one system at a time, and we source every claim the same careful way I just sourced this one for you. And I want to hear from you in the comments below. Which of these 3 layers already sounds closest to how your own family cooks, the fiber base, the soy and bitter greens, or the daily movement surrounded by other people? I read every answer, and it genuinely shapes which region we study next.